thank you everyone for being here tonight. It is a pleasure to be back at Bon Foster again this year, and particularly after the year that you have had here in Illinois. It's been an amazing time in this state and around the nation, and I, of course, have to thank and congratulate all of the staff of Lambda Legal in the Midwest Regional Office for all of the work that they did, the work that we did with the ACLU, the work to get marriage passed, and then the work to get marriage moved up. I have spoken to a number of couples this evening, just as I was floating through the cocktail party earlier, who told me, we got married 2 weeks ago, we got married last week, we're getting married next week. And it really gives a sense of the reality of it, that those 1,000 licenses that have been issued are issued to real people in real families and are making incredible changes in people's lives. And I want to thank all of you for this too, because while we do the work, we could not do it without the support that all of you provide. And it's really impossible to overstate the importance of bringing Illinois to marriage equality. Illinois is an extremely populous state. It helps to cement marriage equality in the Midwest. We still have a ways to go with a number of recalcitrant states, but we are on our way. I was just in Illinois. I was in Iowa 2.5 weeks ago for the 5-year anniversary of the Barnum decision. People may remember when the Barnum decision came down, we brought marriage equality to Iowa, and at that time, Iowa was the 3rd state in the country in which same-sex couples could marry. That was only 5 years ago. We now have 17 states with another half-dozen victories in federal district courts that are currently being stayed in places ranging from Oklahoma to Texas to Virginia to Kentucky to Utah and Michigan. None of those are probably states that most of you would have picked if we were handicapping the next places where marriage equality was likely to come from the federal courts. Maybe somebody would have gotten lucky, but I don't think so. I really don't think that would have been the lineup. In Utah, over 1,000 couples, I think 1,300 couples got married before the stay was issued. Last month in Michigan, about 300 couples got married before the stay was issued. And in one of my favorite legal moments of the last couple of months, the governor of Michigan said, and I quote, "Yes, these marriages are legal, but the state will not recognize them." I don't make these things up. I don't have to make these up. I leave it to the governors to make these things up. And it left many of us wondering what the word legal means to him. I'm still wondering what the word legal means to him. I don't think I will ever understand. Now, happily, here in Illinois, we don't have this problem, because in Illinois, we have an attorney general and a governor who understand what legal means and who have helped to move this forward, and that's why more than 1,000 marriage licenses have been issued in this state so far, and this is before the cutoff date that was originally in place when the legislation was passed. That number is going to go up even higher before we get to the beginning of June. And for the states where we don't have such forward-thinking politicians, we also are lucky to have the administration that we have in Washington, D.C., because right after the governor of Michigan said that clever, legally oriented remark, the Attorney General of the United States quickly said that the federal government was going to recognize these marriages, the marriages in Michigan and the marriages in Utah, so that people were not without any sort of recognition. As has been mentioned, a federal court judge in Ohio ruled in another Lambda Legal case that Ohio must recognize marriages that are performed out of state. This is an important issue that we struggle with all over the country, making sure that marriages that are performed in Illinois or in any of the other 17 states where we have marriage equality will be recognized when we cross state lines. That ruling was stayed, but we were able to get accurate birth certificates, which included both parents on the birth certificates for our plaintiffs in the case. Lambda Legal is currently litigating marriage challenges in Indiana, Nevada, Virginia, West Virginia, and Arizona. As you can see, again, we've picked all the easy states. And yet, you know, that's what people used to say to me. Iowa? I would say, Iowa? But they never trust us. And now they say, Indiana? Are we having this conversation again? And if you saw the news last night or today, in the papers or online or wherever you get your news, you probably see that just yesterday we filed a new marriage challenge in Georgia. So 5 years after bringing marriage equality to the Midwest, we are determined to bring marriage equality to the South as well. next? You know, there are right now 65 marriage challenges across the country, over 40 of them in federal court, the rest in state court. They are at all levels. They are moving, some quickly, some slowly, some barely at all. The number of cases will continue to grow. The number of victories will continue to grow. The 10th Circuit Court of Appeals has already heard appeals in the Utah and Oklahoma cases. The 4th Circuit in Virginia is going to hear the 2 Virginia cases, ours and another one, in mid-May. The 9th Circuit had scheduled our Nevada case for April and took it off the calendar and promised to give us a new date soon, a date we are still waiting for. And recently, the District Court agreed to hear our Indiana case at the District Court level on May 2nd, which is not very far away. Nobody knows which of these cases is going to move fastest, is going to go furthest, but it is highly likely that the Supreme Court could have a marriage case on its docket in the next term for a June 2015 decision. If not, I find it almost impossible to imagine that there will not be a U.S. Supreme Court decision by June of 2016. And I'm very hopeful that that decision is going to be a victory that is going to bring all states online, the way that our Lawrence victory got rid of all remaining sodomy statutes and created a baseline for the United States. But even with a victory at the Supreme Court, marriage work is not going to be over. The work will be far from done. In Iowa, for example, where we won, as I said, 5 years ago, a unanimous decision by the state Supreme Court, we have been litigating. We litigated for the next 4 years over things like birth certificates and death certificates for married couples and their families. We were back at the state Supreme Court twice, 1, 2 more times. And that's a state that does not have a history of antagonism between the state government and the state Supreme Court. So let's not fool ourselves that if the United States Supreme Court declares that all states must allow marriages, that states which do have a bit of an antagonistic relationship with the U.S. Supreme Court, particularly around civil rights issues. I'll just throw off a couple of names here: Alabama, Mississippi, Texas, Louisiana. You can fill in some more. There actually might be a couple in the Midwest. You can fill in some more. Let's not assume that just because the United States Supreme Court has spoken, that everything automatically follows. There is going to be an enormous amount of enforcement work that is going to have to happen. And as has been said, and I think cannot be reiterated enough, marriage equality is not the only issue facing LGBT people. It may seem like that sometimes in the newspapers, but we know that's far from true. We get over 7,000 calls a year at our help desks in our 5 offices across the country. The largest number of calls we get are about employment discrimination. We are soon going to be in the very odd position of having states where same-sex couples can marry and where you can be fired from your job without recourse for being lesbian or gay, which is going to make for some very interesting conundrums when people get married and when it is public that they have done so. It makes no sense whatsoever. It's the law. And so we need to change that. There's harassment that young people face in schools, discrimination and violence. Just last week, Chris Clark, an attorney here in our Midwest office, worked through the night to do an advocacy letter to a principal of an Illinois high school, a school in a town about 2 hours west of here, that was blocking the nomination of a young woman who wanted to run for and was being encouraged by her classmates to run for prom prince. I barely know what that is, but she should be allowed to be one. The school was saying that she couldn't be a prom prince because she was a girl. We pointed out that she could be a prom prince. And in fact, with the information that we were able to provide to her, she went back and argued with the administration and they allowed her to run. Her mother wrote to us the next day to tell us the principal had apologized, reversed his decision, and her mother said that her daughter, and I quote, stands taller today, is beaming from ear to ear, and is one step closer to becoming the amazing adult that is yet to come because of this decision. Camilla mentioned Scott's work on HIV. We still face an HIV epidemic that hits gay and bisexual men and transgender people the hardest of any groups in the United States. And our HIV project is doing everything we have done since the very beginning. We filed the country's first HIV discrimination case, and we continue to be very involved in using the law to confront stigma, to fight criminalization, to fight for employment protections and for access to medical care, and as one of the slides showed, a very important case around insurance rights. So one thing I want to say before closing, because we have so much to celebrate, and I don't want to bring this down. I want us to be happy, and I want us to keep going, because we have opportunities like we have never had before. We have won case after case after case in the most unlikely places, in courts we didn't dream we could go into, and we can keep that going. But no civil rights movement in this country has ever been over. Look at the movement for racial justice, look at the women's movement. Lots of resistance, lots of unfinished business, lots of stalling. We cannot let that happen to our movement. So we cannot declare victory prematurely because one state or 5 states or 50 states have marriage rights or have something else. We need to go for the entire package, for full equality for everyone in our community. And I'm here to tell you that Lambda Legal is not going to stop until that happens. We're not going to even slow down until that happens, until full equality is ours, and until the epidemic is over. We can't do that alone. We need all of you with us, and I hope I believe you will be. And I want to thank you again for all the support that you have given over the years, for being here tonight, for helping us in so many ways. There are people here who volunteer, there are people who are corporate attorneys, there are people who are plaintiffs, there are people who are former staff and board members and other volunteers. It takes a village to make this work happen, and we have that here in Chicago and in the Midwest. And thank you for being part of it. Stay with us until it's over, because if you think things have been moving fast this past year, you haven't seen anything yet. Wait.